So the night opened with Will Ospreay and United Empire, in particular Francesco Akira and Henare, taking on the Don Callis family, being represented by Rocky Romero, Lance Archer, and Brian Cage. It was a good match, man. Good opening match, nice high levels of excitement. We got to see Will Ospreay, man. He's so impressive with his speed. One crazy move that happened was Rocky Romero pointing at the camera and then celebrating and saying "go," and he ate a hidden blade from Will Ospreay, and that actually cost him the match. Will Ospreay pinned him right there, and that was that. Alright, so next up, we shift our focus to the International Championship, which will be defended in a three-way match at All In. Renee interviews Okada, and Okada says nothing is more important than the family. He also takes this moment to bash Takeshita for turning his back on the family. He states we need to keep the championship in the family, which would imply jumping Takeshita. We shift over to the ring, and we have Tony Schiavone waiting to interview Kyle Fletcher, the international champion. And Kyle reminds us that we're in the midst of the greatest international championship run of all time. He reminds us how much he owes Don Callis. And he agrees with Okada that it would be in the best interest to keep it in the family. And bro, the moment the crowd hears the Don Callis name, the whole crowd instinctively chants, F Don Callis. However, Kyle tells Okada to stay in his lane and sort of play the henchman, the goon, and help Kyle retain the championship and win the match. Kyle also congratulated Takeshita on losing the G1 tournament. And as soon as he mentioned that, Takeshita himself shows up. Now, I'm sure Takeshita had a lot of stuff to say, but he said nothing. It was on sight, straight up attack. And he kind of overpowered Kyle, and he showed the ultimate disrespect of raising the championship, even though he's not the champion. For this match, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty crazy, man. But my favorite out of all these guys is Kyle. I hope he retains. I think he's a great champion. And moving on to the sit-down interview with Renee, Kenny Omega, and Will Ospreay. This was in preparation for the AEW World Championship match at All In. And it opens with Will Ospreay glazing. He talks about how much he looks up to Kenny, and Kenny replied that at the time that they met, he noticed Will, and it was in his best interest as the top talent to know about the flavor of the month. Those were his exact words. And Kenny says he was not impressed with Will at their first meeting. Kenny does give props on his growth when they met later, many years later, in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Kenny implied that he had filled the shoes that Kenny left, and he mentioned Will was becoming the new face of New Japan, almost implying Kenny was the face before that, you know. So condescending. Kenny says that he was only brought out to New Japan for that match because they needed to sell tickets, and Ospreay by himself was not a draw. These are Kenny's words, not mine. And they needed a star. Ospreay then went on a rant about how hard he worked during COVID, and all through that, Kenny is stone-faced, until Ospreay mentioned that some of his locker mates were starving. And I heard Ospreay's voice crack when he said that, and I think he was fighting tears, bro. But Kenny replies with, so what? Even if you did have fans, they wouldn't get loud for you. That's Kenny saying that, and he says Will doesn't excite the fans, which is just simply not true. And Will laughed at that as well, because I'm sure you've seen how crazy the fans go for Will Ospreay, and we can only imagine what it's gonna be like in Wembley, bro, when he's in his home country. They also took a look back at their match at Forbidden Door and Don Callis' involvement. And Kenny says, it was well documented how much of a snake Don Callis was at the time, that Will Ospreay should have never even engaged in business with Don. And then Will, he gets personal and talks about, you embarrassed me, it was 80% you, 20% me, I don't know what that means. I think that was like technical stuff, and I think he was trying to like talk to him on like a personal level, like, because I don't know what those terms mean, bro. I have a theory that he meant like 80% of the match time Kenny is supposed to shine and 20% Will is supposed to shine. But that's just a theory. I don't know for real. Now, I just want to say either Will Ospreay is like a very emotional guy or he's a great actor. Because I think even Kenny was like, damn, bro. They bring up how Will Ospreay used Don Callis in that match that screwed Kenny over. I think they used a screwdriver or something. And Will Ospreay says that match keeps him up at night, and he's ashamed of those actions. And with that, Kenny replies in sort of like a way of like feeling superior. He's like, I forgive you for admitting that you couldn't have done it without Don Callis. And bro, like, I really like this version of Kenny Omega. It's much better than him being a nice guy. I prefer this one much more. And they go back and forth for a little bit, and then Kenny says that Will Ospreay was hoping to fight Kenny over MJF because he thought it would be an easy fight given Kenny's medical history, diverticulitis and whatnot. Will Ospreay immediately shuts that down and says that he wants to be the first Englishman in the world to win a world championship on home soil. Kenny then said that he'll whoop his ass in front of his mother. But before he could even finish, Will Ospreay got up and Kenny started to walk away, Security is now getting involved. And Kenny walks out with a cold line, bro. He says, your son is going to need a new hero after he sees what I do to you. Now, this match, bro, is got high stakes. I want Kenny to win, but I think the narrative dictates that the hometown hero makes history. But imagine Will Ospreay loses, bro. Imagine the kind of arc he'll have to go through. It'll be something similar to Hangman Page's depression arc type shit. But yeah, I think Will Ospreay will win at Wembley. And probably if he loses, we might even get some like a riot type shit. I don't know. I don't know how crazy UK wrestling fans are, but yo, it's gonna be crazy. All right, and now it's time for the TBS Championship. This will be contested in a 4-way match between Hikaru Shida, Persephone, Chris Statlander, and the champion Maya World. And right off the bat, I want to say Persephone is very impressive, but Chris Statlander is the best in this match, in my opinion. She literally did a kick out straight into a kip up, and she stole a whole Hikaru Shida mid-move from Persephone and turned it into her own powerbomb, bro. In the end of the match, though, Maya won with a deep surprise roll-up reversal to retain the TBS Championship. And she pinned the biggest threat, in my opinion, Chris Statlander, in a roll-up that looked kind of impossible to kick out of. Like, it was so deep, I feel like if Chris Statlander tried to kick out, she would have hurt her neck. Next up, we had the Brawling Birds challenging Divine Dominion for the Tag Team Championships. And this is a match that I would really like to see. I think these are two of the best women's tag teams. It would be a great match, I have no doubt about it. The next bout was Jay White versus Jon Moxley. And Excalibur dropped an interesting statistic on this. Apparently, Jon Moxley has never beaten Jay White one-on-one. The match itself was great, and it ended with a win for Moxley. And immediately after that, Jay White was attacked by the Dogs, until he was saved by the Conglomeration. But then Gabe Kidd came in and dropped the Conglomeration. And then Roderick Strong came in and assisted the Conglomeration. And then the Trios champions came in. And then the Dogs and Gabe Kidd ran away. And while they were running away, Hangman Page gave a compliment to one of the boots of the Dogs, which I thought were very stylish. And immediately after all that, Ricochet pulls up with his gang, and Page is just like, okay, enough pulling up, guys. And he sets out a challenge for any team to come after the Trios Championships at Wembley. We now catch up with Maya World after her successful title defense. She's shortly interrupted by the world champion, Willow Nightingale, who was there to offer Maya a championship match based on a prior verbal agreement. And Willow says she's, and I quote, a woman of her word. And so on Saturday on Collision, we will watch these two face off for the world championship. MJF sent his Spanish translator, Jonathan Cruz, out to the ring in order to remind Andrade how little he thinks of him, and also to let Andrade know that he will never be the real world champion. Cruz also says that Andrade is not even a real Latino, which is a crazy take if you ask me. And Cruz says also he has more guapo. Now, me no hablo español, and I'm not gonna do any research, but I'm gonna guess based on the context and the delivery. Guapo either means he has more money or he has more balls. Anyway, Cruz also challenged him to a match, and I think this was pretty dumb on Cruz's part, because he's a translator and he's challenging a professional wrestler to a professional wrestling match. So Andrade immediately accepts and he's down in the ring within a minute, bro. And the match ends as soon as it starts. After he drops Cruz, he says that he has some words for MJF and he demands that he come out here. And in classic MJF fashion, his song starts playing like he's about to come out, but of course he's not even in the same state. He's chilling somewhere exotic in a hot tub, bruh. One thing that's interesting is MJF is referring to himself as the world champion. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm jumping back into AEW after a few months of being out. I mean, I was in and out. I have a general gist of what's going on, but this is a surprise to me, like MJF claiming to be champion when Kenny Omega is the current champion according to the program. So yeah, I guess I'll catch up with it and I'll start to understand as the days go by. And once MJF is done with his message, Cruz pays the price for the disrespect by taking another crazy move. I think they call it the DM. Next up was Renee, out here working overtime, and she had an interview between Mercedes and Willow, who were in the same building but in different rooms, and they decided to have like a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom meeting, even though they're all in the same building. So eventually, Mercedes mentioned that she hates the fact that Willow is always smiling. Even when Mercedes was on the verge of losing her entire career, she looked up and saw Willow smiling at her, and that angered her to the core. And Willow says, yeah, that's me. They're like, I'm just being me. And eventually it got so heated that they left their like rooms to meet and fight physically. Bro, it got crazy. Like, they started in the back, they made their way to the front, and I saw Mercedes kick Willow with her high heel, bro. No exaggeration, that fight was quite crazy. Swerve responds to Hangman Page's challenge, and given the history between those two, that'll be quite a crazy bout, even though it'll be a trios situation. Alright, next up we have a quarterfinal of the Continental Cup. Legendary Nigel McGuinness up against Hechicero from CMLL. And Nigel pulls up hurt with a limp and a very visible bandage wrapped around his ankle. And in this match in particular, I'm rooting for Hechicero. I feel like he's a very dynamic guy, and I'd like to see him go far in the tournament. Dynamic in terms of his moveset. He's very creative in the ring. Unfortunately though, or let me say fortunately for Nigel, he got the win. It was very surprising, but I guess the narrative is very strong around Nigel. He's fighting through the Continental Cup to get to Wembley as an Englishman, you know. It's very important that the home crowd is happy to see their people at Wembley. So Nigel, I feel like he'll get there, man. He'll get his ticket to Wembley through this cup. So it's now him and Moxley in the semifinals, and we will find out who else makes it through on Collision. We then got a nice little video package for Darby Allin versus Kevin Knight for the TNT Championship coming up at All In. And it called back to like early days. Darby reminded Kevin of his beginnings, and Darby spoke about his relationship with Sting. And just a nice video package. And then we cut to Tony Schiavone in the ring. He calls out the champion, Kevin Knight, and immediately Kevin arrives. He grabs the mic out of Tony's hand and kicks him out of the ring. Not physically, but like he tells him to get out. And he says people need to understand that this ain't the jet speed days, bruh. Kev is not a young boy anymore, and he claims to be the greatest TNT champion of all time. Which is a bold claim, especially when we've had guys like Cody Rhodes, Kyle Fletcher, and the late great Brody Lee. Kevin then challenges Darby to show up, and he does show up shortly after. And Kevin demonstrated that he's done his homework on Darby, and he demands that before Darby gets close, he declares any weapons or explosives that he might be carrying on his person. Once Darby exposed his torso to show that he doesn't have any concealed weapons, Kev invited him to come up to the stage and then literally cooked him alive. Literally threw all the pyrotechnics at this guy's face, man. And while Darby was there in a daze, Kevin hit him with the belt right in the face. He then placed Darby upside down, tied a steel chair around his neck, and did a coast-to-coast dropkick, almost beheading Darby Allin, bruh. But Kevin does show that he's a sportsman, and he's just like checking with the medical team, trying to ensure that Darby will make it to Wembley. Like, is he gonna make it to Wembley? And Darby had to leave on a stretcher, and as if Kevin had not done enough, he shows up while they're on their way to the hospital. And he warns Darby's partner, like, yo, don't get caught up in the crosshairs. And everyone is just like, damn, bro, you really had to stop us to tell us that? Even the doctor's like, come on, we ain't got time for this, man. And now it's time for the main event. We have Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks versus the Don Callis family. And bro, Don Callis and his family have been a big part of this episode, even though Don himself hasn't featured in the episode at all. And this match had a crazy entrance, especially Kenny Omega, bro. At a point, he had like the all-white effect. Like, I think the lights were just shining so brightly on him. Like, he was looking kind of like I don't want to say a god, but he was looking like a real entity right there, bro. And before he pulled up, he actually met Will Ospreay in the hallway. And I don't know what they were discussing, but it seemed heated, man. Will Ospreay he's not letting Kenny breathe, I can tell you now. He's on his neck, bruh. So the match itself was crazy. And one thing it had as well is like smoke in the arena. And I think that's from the explosion that Darby had to go through, man. That was crazy. Like, for most of the match, it was foggy, man. Like, it was actually quite a crazy explosion. I hope Darby's alright. The match itself was actually quite intense, you know. A lot of back and forth momentum swings, a lot of moves, especially tandem tag team moves. And it was a big win with a pin for Kenny Omega. And immediately he won. RPG Vice came out to ambush the Elite. And once Adam Copeland saw that in the backstage, he said, nah, came out sprinting. And I think he had a strategy with Christian Cage. He probably told Christian, like, all of those guys are mine. And Christian was like, okay, I'll only support you if you get downed. If you've ever played Apex Legends, you're familiar with that strategy. So Christian waited for Edge to go down before he engaged the enemies. It's actually a very effective strategy, and I think it was executed quite well. After the chaos, Will Ospreay came in to find Kenny Omega alone in the ring, and Will asked him, like, you said you wanted to tell me something after the match. What was it? And then Kenny replies with, oh, I wanted to say, security, get him out of here. The whole time Will Ospreay is walking out, Kenny Omega is trash talking him like crazy, bro. He's out there calling him an English bitch. And Ospreay takes as much as he can, and then he sprints right past the same security guards who are there to hold him like they didn't exist, bro. Like, he just dashed past them. Eventually they caught up and held Ospreay back, and while they were holding Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega took advantage and hit a wicked V-trigger. And yeah, immediately after that, he threw out the same security guards and gave Will Ospreay a one-winged angel onto a table on the outside. It was brutal, bruv. It was quite brutal. And that's how we ended the episode, bruh. I don't even know if Will Ospreay is alive still. I mean, he's alive, of course, but is he all right? Is he going to make it to Wembley?